Traders, this is Christian from Traffic Trade Group, and this is your end of day as well as end of week market recap. I'm going to do just that, recap the week's performance first in this video, and reminder, everything that we're going through in today's video is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. What a nice week that was in terms of performance. Just to kind of go over the big numbers, SPY finished up 2.5%. For the week. That's a big rebound. Remember where we were last week as we kind of closed out the week. We had the major indices cracking below the 20-day moving average. The first of the month was a was a horrible first trading day of the month. That August seasonality really kind of played a part there, and then we really this week was a heck of a nice rebound. IWM, which was also really ugly last week, closed up 2.5% this week, which surprises me seeing those numbers, because I thought IWM had a couple days where it also trailed this week, but clearly a couple of the days made up for that with nice performance there. Qs were up 3.7% for the week. Really nice outperformance there. A lot of good performance coming out of the mega cap tech this week. Apple comes to mind too. Google had a nice day today. Tesla had a couple of nice days this week. EEM was up 2.6%. IFA uh, International Developed Markets finished up 3.5% this week. TLC slightly down for the week. Gold had a nice week. Gold miners had a huge week. Gold and silver miners were your best performers for this week. You could see the metals and mining ETF was up 9.5% this week. Major move there. Didn't hear too much. It was quiet. I only saw, I did see some people talking about it, but it's amazing what some people are focused on just a small subset of stocks and not looking at some of the best performers for the week, because the gold miners and the silver miners had a huge breakout week. Also, gold is on the cusp of a breakout. The dollar was down 0.5% for the week. Cryptos did very well. There should be a percentage here. A little mistake there. And obviously things like Ethereum, which I will try to go over in this video if I remember to. Growth finished up 3.2%. So big week for growth. Value also finished up for the week, but certainly growth performed a bit better this week. I mentioned the gold miners, though, that was your best group. Silver miners, I'll have to check the performance of that, but they also had a big week too. Home builders, even it shocks me that uranium stocks were up 4.5%, because that group looked a bit tired this week. Maybe that performance was more in the beginning of the week. China names were up 3.9%. Consumer discretionary had a good week. Amazon bounced back a bit, as well as I mentioned Tesla. And I believe those are the two top components. Amazon definitely. Tech had a big week, up 3.4. I mean, it's a great week for tech, up 3.4%. Semis 3.4% up as well. Your cryptos did well. What didn't do well? More of your energy stocks, some of your defensive areas of the market. Healthcare finished down again this week. Those two areas have been underperforming. Defense and aerospace kind of took a week off this week. Utilities were up slightly. So what I'm going to do in this video for you, as we kind of sum up that's the best performers for the week. By the way, look, here's your international performers. Greece was your top performer there, up 7.8%. But what I'm going to do for you in this video is just kind of summarize, a couple themes that I thought. Another big week of earnings. I've talked about that all week long, that big movers on to the upside, downside. That was the same, by the way, that was the same thing today. I'll bring up the next screen that I want to show you guys. And I want to try to get through this kind of quickly, so I'll try to talk fast. But here's where your big movers were. And I'm going to start with the down movers, because this is, by the way, and again, like, this is what we saw all week long, with decent movers to not only to the upside but to the downside, really kind of making some separation there. And TTD was down 38%. Twilio was down 19%. Again, big moves. Chime is another name that reported earnings. SMR, which is a uranium name, I traded this name previously, did not trade it this week. or don't own a position in it. GoDaddy, Pins, some big moves, and even these are the large cap names. When you look at the small cap names, Sezzle fizzled down 30. That's a horrible joke. Down 34%. Sweet Green, nothing sweet about that earnings report. Oh my, that's another bad joke. That's it for this video. For this video, sorry, it's the end of the week. I can't help it. What performed? I mean, look at this. This was not on earnings, but look at this. NEGG was up 34% this week. Just big moves. SoundCloud made, or SoundHound, excuse me. I always say that this name wrong. Up 26%. So again, like Docs, that name's kind of got forgotten about. Had a nice earnings quarter there. PSIX had another one. So let me just bring up the bigger names too. GEN, NTRA, KTOS. So in any event, I can go on and on with these names, but we really saw some very interesting reports this week. Some that really did well, some that didn't. Let me just bring up the next screen that I wanted to go over. Here's how our watch list performed this week. Let me stop sharing and I'll go to this. Very nice week. How this works is this doesn't include my open positions, but that's on another sheet that I've got here. But you could see the names that I took this week were highlighted in green. So I took names. I'll go through some of these names, but CRDO I took. I didn't take all my favorite setups. Some of them reported earnings, like a KTOS. CLS I took. Broadcom I took, which was on the weekend watch list, and we saw big call buying in that name, which I went over earlier in the week. What else did I have on the list that really stood out? DHI had another good week. Nvidia was up 5% for my trigger. AEHR did well. Another name on the weekend watch list. I mentioned NEGG, which was on the weekend watch list, did very well. Unfortunately, I did not take that one. I did take CLS, which is another one of these electrical component names. So, by the way, so I do this every weekend. You could see these names that are in gray. One of the processes that I do over the weekend is I go through the whole list and I decide which names I'm going to keep and which names I'm going to throw out. And I usually come back with a list of about 15 names, and I put triggers on all of them. I send them out on Sunday night. I also, in the weekend video, just to kind of go over what you don't get by just with these public videos, I go over on Sunday, like I do probably about at least a half hour video, and I go over the most important things that are takeaways from the week and what I'm watching for the week ahead. So check that out. You can see there's a coupon code. You get all that over the weekend, and you also get access to the trading room, which I go over obviously a lot, and do a lot, all week long with the trading room. Also give you midday notes. Here was today's midday note. What did I do with this? I have to figure out what I did with this. Yeah. So this was yesterday's midday note. Right, and I had CLS on there. You could see what CLS did today. Broke out of this triangle, so this worked. That was the only trade setup that I had for yesterday. So this worked quite nice. This move. I also include open positions. Today's note. Couple things that I included were Tesla. I was watching this for a while. I tweeted this out a few weeks ago. I think it was a few weeks ago. It feels like it was a few weeks ago that this triangle pattern that this was in. So I did get long Tesla. We'll see how it goes. Tesla's one of those names where it's kind of been inconsistent this year. I'm just going to minimize my breath screener here so that you could see. But for now, it's a breakout. So I'm going to follow this. Where do I think Tesla could get to if it continues? Notice how it kind of back tested the top of the value area for the week. So it held in here. Again, it did not close strong, but it should open up above next week's value area too. So my support will probably be 326. What happened? Oh, this must have reverted back to something. Let's go back to Tesla here. I'll have a little bit more tolerance, which will be the top of next week's value area, but it did hold where it needed to. Again, it took out a VPOC and kind of hung out around there. So let's see if we get some follow through. Tesla's been one of those names for me where I like to hold it long term, but short term, it's kind of all over the place. And that's kind of what we've got going on here. But I would love to see this break higher. And going back to this 1 hour chart, I was going to mention a potential target if it does work really well, which would be all the way about 361.40, which would about be close to 10% higher. So I like that. I also wanted to cover just a couple themes, right? And I noticed a couple of people were talking about this. Ripster talk. I saw this, and I retweeted him and talked about we've had a lot of areas that from this market that have gone up a lot over the last few months. A lot of really nice themes that have worked really well, and I've talked about them quite a bit. I've talked about the aerospace and defense group with, and that includes your drones, your space companies, right? Your vertical lift type companies. We've also seen another theme that's been very strong is uranium plays. We've heard about the administration saying that they're getting involved in nuclear power. So that's worked really well. But what happens is once we come upon earnings, those names are going to have to kind of prove the advance, right? With the analogy that I set up earlier, it's kind of like, I think Warren Buffett has said this. I apologize if it wasn't Warren Buffett, but we've so for example, and I'm going to kind of put a twist. I put a twist on a lot of these sayings, but he says, when the tide is out, I guess, um, you don't notice who's swimming without a bathing suit. So when the tide rolls back in, you can see like who's been swimming without a bathing suit, and it's kind of the same. The way that I kind of look at or kind of put a twist on this saying is that it's all of these themes have been very strong, right? And they've been going with kind of a wave of momentum, right? But once the earnings come out, you could kind of see who's been swimming per se naked, or who's really who can't back up the advances in what you've seen in the price action. Some companies are doing that, right? They're proving that they have the numbers to back it, and they've got the earnings growth and the sales growth. So while I'm very much a technical trader, I don't ignore these fundamentals, and I want to be involved in names that have strong sales growth, strong earnings growth, right? And you'll see these names kind of fall apart a little bit, or just maybe they've advanced a little bit too much. And I'm seeing that in both of those groups a bit. I'm seeing that both in aerospace. So again, like just to kind of go over, don't worry, I'll get over to some of the strong movers. But here's XAR. And again, I'm kind of replaying, going over something that I talked about earlier in the week. You could use SPY as a proxy, not a proxy, but you could see how if it's been showing relative outperformance or weakness. Here's where since April, aerospace and defense equally weighted, this ETF XAR has outperformed tremendously from April to the middle of July. Since then, it's been kind of showing it's been tired, right? And you could see this relative outperformance. And if you go through some stocks one by one, you could see that some of these stocks are kind of coming in a bit. Here's Joby, right? Here's ASTS breaking down, right? Here's Rocket Labs reported, right? They did not have a good looking candle. They've held in there okay, but yeah. So if you go up and down the names in the aerospace and defense that have been super strong, a lot of them are kind of coming back, pulling back a little bit. So number one, I think they're a little bit tired, and number two, some of them, the earnings are not spectacular in some of the earnings reports. And that's the same thing if you go through the uranium names. So again, like this is important. I know I'm kind of dwelling on some of the things that are changing here and moving to the downside because it really helps to not be involved in this. I've talked about the cyber names, right? So even though you may have a favorite in the cyber group, that's fine, but the overall group has been getting shellacked versus the overall tech sector. And if you don't believe me, look at cyber versus XLK. Now, this is not anything new, right? This has been going on basically. It started to kind of show lower highs going back to around May. You could probably figure that out. Since then, the cyberspace has been really underperforming and skidding versus the overall tech space, right? Now, we know other areas. If you go look at SMH, versus XLK, right? That's actually not been that strong, maybe, but it's certainly not been breaking down. Here's FDN. Oh, that's actually not right either. So this is the internet stocks, which are actually underperforming too. So in any event, right, measuring these things a little bit versus their sector or versus their overall versus the overall market will give you a sense of what's showing relative strength, what's showing underperformance. So to me, what's been showing strength is some of the things that are involved still in AI. And I think, and by the way, the power generation companies are also showing a little bit of weakness too. Not huge weakness, but they just look a little bit tired to me for now. And again, I'm not getting super negative on this group. I'm just saying that, hey, I haven't seen these names kind of go back higher. So these are the things, number one, like for earnings season, that you want to come away with some takeaways, right? To me, what's acting very well is just the names that are maybe making AI more efficient, some of the electrical components. CLS is doing very well. I already showed that chart. The other name that I was going to show is TEL, right, which is another name that's involved. It looks like I got long this name on the turn here. Anything that kind of makes these groups more efficient. SANM, right, is another one that made new. I think that's a new closing high for this name. But to me, like this is a theme that's going to be here for a bit. And then of course, like being in some of the select semiconductors. CRDO was a name that I've keep buying the dips on. um, what's another name that ALAB had a nice day today, right? Nice earnings, nice follow through today after a bit of an inside day. Still extended here, but very strong. So I mentioned those are a couple names. Also, keep going back to the well with Robinhood. It's so funny. I put out a chart. I'm going to retweet it later, but I put out a chart just a couple days ago, and I said, hey, this was really set up for a move higher, and I didn't say that exactly in the tweet. I just put the chart, I put the trend line, and I put like eyes watching. And I got a couple people who were like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" I mean, hey, it's ripe for a move for a move if it breaks the trend line, and if it breaks through the value area. Like this is a really nice setup. But I got people like asking Grok. I got people, so I'll try to. I said, would it help if I put an arrow? And somebody said, yeah, that would do it. But I don't know, like at this point, like if you're a trader and you're going through charts, you should be able to recognize that too. And that's why I didn't put any detail behind it. But I have to I have to remember that not everybody is a technical trader. And to me, this looked very good for a break higher. I wanted to go through as well some of the FANG names too, because they've been impressive. Apple really made a huge move. Congrats to folks who went long Apple. Really impressive to see this type of a move. There has been a lot of call activity in this one, so congrats. Where do I think Apple could get to? Maybe this 235.67 VPOC. I mentioned Tesla already. Google had a nice day. I've been sitting in Google for about, it feels like forever, but because I guess it hasn't moved that well. And sometimes you just have to sit and be patient in this because it did basically just kind of go sideways here. And nice break higher in Google. And, I thought Google said a lot of positive things in their earnings. And, I got involved on a little bit of a dip in this one, but really nice in this one. Let's talk a little bit. I mentioned I would come back to the Ethereum chart. Very nice to see Ethereum break higher. If you note too, there's kind of been a barrier. Oops, let me bring up the right Ethereum futures. Let's get that first. So there you go. If you look at the weekly chart, this has been a big level. Notice, by the way, like going back about a month or so ago, right? The barrier was the bottom of the value area, and look at how well the bottom of the level told you that this was having issues with trying to get through. And once it went through this 25.94 level, it really went. And I played this move through the value area. Now it looks like maybe we've got a possible breakout here. That level to be long with Ethereum is 3863. And this looks really good here, guys. As long as it can hold above that level, that's the level that I would be long. And again, you don't have to do much more than that. If you understand trading from a risk standpoint, right? The object is not to make predictions, right? I get this question a lot. Well, what's your price target? I don't have a price target, right? The price target is a breakout, and then manage the trade appropriately, right? And again, this has to do with just trading experience, right? But I want out of some names that have a potential to break out is for them to continue to go higher and higher and higher, right? And the goal is to stay with the trade. So where would I stay with the trade and understand, like, if it doesn't work, I know exactly where to get out of the trade. That's 38.63. If it breaks back down here, then the trade is off. If it continues to break out here and do a great things, so be it. And that's exactly the whole thing with Robinhood. People have asked me over time, what's your price target in Robinhood, right? I don't have one. It's just to basically stick with this trend for as long as it's a trend. Now, eventually, Robinhood is not going to be in an uptrend, right? Eventually, like all stocks and things, right? They eventually kind of digest and they break down a little bit. But I don't know when that's going to be. I don't have a crystal ball, nor does anybody else. What I will do is I will stick with this and try to get as much money out of this trade and this name for as long as it's trending, right? And every time it sets up like this, like it did here, right? That tells me this is a good thing. So where would I get concerned for Robinhood? Notice how well, it just slipped here below the 20-day moving average and it got right back above. It's a great sign for the stock. So as long as it stays above the 20-day moving average here, I will be in it and I will be buying dips all along the way. That's how it works, guys, for trend trading, right? We don't predict. Don't No one has a crystal ball and can predict how long a trend is going to last. We stick with it for as long as it's a trend. We continue to add on dips, and then once it finally breaks, then and that like I hope that it continues to run somewhere up in here, and if it breaks the 20-day moving average up here, then I'm out all the way up here. Right? That's the name of the game. That's how people make a lot of money trading and in names. So that's the plan with Robinhood, is to get out when the trend breaks. That's, for some people, they can't handle that, but it is what it is. That's basically how it works, guys. What else did I want to go over? Micron had a big day today. I think Micron looks really good. Some of the other names like Western Digital, Seagate have acted really well. This does have to get through some resistance, and that resistance is right around like 121. But I like what Micron is doing here, and I really like what Western Digital is doing here too. So in any event, I don't want to have the video to be super long. Let me see if there's any other. I think I went through enough screens. And that's it, guys. Guys, have a great weekend, and I hope to see you in the trading room. Take advantage of that special there, that will get you involved. Check it out for a month. If you don't like it, cancel. And it'd be a great trial. And